My name is Kinsley. I'm 35 years old, currently living and working in a small lakeside town in the state of Maine. That morning, I had just finished my final therapy session when I received a call from a relative. "You don't need to come back. Your mother had a stroke, but Anna is already there." That light, almost casual sentence felt like a blade slicing through my chest, because my whole life I've always been the shadow behind my sister. I was the child born to carry what was left over, the one always chosen last, the one always told to be the bigger person. But now I'm sitting inside the very house that was taken from me with a forged signature. And I'm going to tell you something they never expected to come out. Have you ever been treated like a backup plan in your own family? If this story strikes a chord, leave a comment, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe, because what I'm about to share is the answer to all those silent years. I still remember the day Anna was taken to the art center for ballet lessons. She got to pick out a brand new blush pink tutu, her hair was neatly pinned up, her feet slid into shiny satin slippers. And I stood in the parking lot holding a bag of diapers for the newborn, sweat clinging to my back, and my mother turned to me and said, "Stay in the car and watch the baby. Don't waste their time." I was only 10 years old. While other kids in my class took painting and music lessons, I already knew how to change diapers, mix formula, steam vegetables, scrub stoves, and do homework under the flickering light above the kitchen sink. Every time I asked my mother why Anna got to go to school and I didn't, she'd smile as softly as the breeze over the lake and say, "Because you're more sensible. You don't need much to shine." I used to think that was a compliment. But as I grew older, I realized it was just an easy way to dismiss me. A way to avoid investing anything in me. By the time I was 12, I could plan weekend dinners. At 14, I was the one calling the cleaners every time Mom stained the tablecloth. Anna just had to sing pop songs from her vocal lessons in front of the mirror and call for me to bring her juice. Every time that happened, Mom would glance from Anna to me and say with pride, "If I could combine you two, I'd have the perfect child." I would smile faintly, but something inside me would quietly shrink. On my 16th birthday, I still had never had a proper party. That year, I hoped my mom would remember. I had overheard her planning a lavish birthday for Anna the month before. I didn't expect much. Just a small cake and maybe a dress that hadn't been worn by someone else. But that afternoon, my mom placed an old cardboard box on my bed. I opened it and saw the emerald green dress Anna had worn to her classmates' party last year. She said, "I had Miss Myra alter it. Isn't it nice? Still in great condition." I forced a smile. The dress wasn't ugly, but the fabric was worn under the arms and the zipper was stuck. I slipped it on, stood in front of the mirror, and told myself, "At least it's a gift." But deep down, I knew I was never the priority. I was only allowed what was left. Even if it was my own birthday. Then one day a real opportunity came. That year, our high school held selections for a prestigious summer program at a major university in New York. The 6-week program included classes taught by professors and was only for students with top GPAs, strong recommendations, and personal interviews. I got selected. One of only 3 students in the whole school. The principal even called my home to congratulate me. I nearly cried when I got the acceptance letter. That night I couldn't sleep, imagining the grand library, the stone lecture halls, students walking through rows of leafy trees. I even planned to get a part-time job near campus to cover personal expenses. But when I handed the letter to my mom, she barely glanced at it before setting it down. "That's not going to work," she said. I thought maybe she didn't understand, so I explained, "It's fully funded. I just need to pack personal items and catch a bus to New York." She didn't let me finish. She pointed out the window toward the yard. "Who's going to mow the lawn this summer? Who'll help me plant melons? What about your little brother? Who's going to watch him while I work 2 shifts at the supermarket?" I stammered, "But this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I can." "You're not going anywhere," she interrupted, her voice colder than a January wind. "There are plenty more years to study. Family comes first." I remember walking upstairs with the letter, tears soaking through the paper. I folded it and placed it in an old shoebox, along with all my award certificates and photos that never made it to the walls. That night, I overheard Anna on the phone with a friend. "Poor Kinsley, always stuck at home. But that's what she's best at, right?" I wasn't best at anything in that house. I just knew how to endure it. In silence. In surrender. In a kind of love that always came with conditions. And even now, I still remember sitting by my bedroom window watching moonlight fall quietly across the garden, thinking about a life I'd never have, because I simply wasn't the one they chose. I was just the one left behind to make their lives easier. And they never once asked if I was willing. I left home one June morning. No goodbyes, no hugs, no one looking back. My mother was still sleeping in after her late shift at the supermarket, and Anna didn't even glance up from her phone as I dragged my suitcase out the door. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because I had run out of tears a long time ago. I moved to Massachusetts with $200 saved up, a full scholarship for psychology at a community college, and a backpack with worn straps. I started with nameless jobs, cleaning dorm rooms, working prep in a 24-hour diner, tutoring kids on the autism spectrum. Always on the move, always tired, always behind, but I never complained. Because at least this was a life I chose. In my second year, just as I started my internship at a counseling center in Cambridge, I hit a crisis. My landlord suddenly raised the rent. I tried taking extra night shifts, but after 2 weeks I collapsed and was hospitalized for dehydration and malnutrition. The doctor said if I kept going like that I could pass out in the street. That night, lying in a hospital bed with IVs taped to my arms, staring at the white ceiling, I thought, I have to call Mom. I picked up my phone, dialed with trembling fingers. After a few rings, she answered. I spoke plainly, no sugarcoating. Mom, I need help. Just around $500 to cover rent this month. I promise I'll pay it back once my scholarship money comes in. The line was silent for a few moments. Then her voice came, calm, like she was talking about the weather. Kinsley, I can't. Things are tight here too. Anna's opening a store soon. I have to help her with everything. You're an adult now, handle it yourself. I hung up after that. Said nothing else. What I felt wasn't disappointment. It was something emptier. Like I had just confirmed what I'd known all along. I would never be a priority in her eyes. I didn't tell anyone about it. Didn't write it in a journal. Never brought it up again. I went back to work, to studying, picking myself up step by step. A year later, I graduated with honors. 2 years later, I earned a master's scholarship at a top school. And by the time I turned 27, I opened my first counseling clinic on the outskirts of Portland. Through it all, I still received Christmas cards from Mom, generic ones with a squiggly signature at the bottom. Anna, on the other hand, sometimes posted photos of a boutique makeup store in Texas. The store was called Anna Grace Cosmetics. I didn't care. I had learned how to clear my heart of expectations. Until I turned 32. I was on a business trip in Dallas, having just finished a seminar at a professional conference, when an old friend invited me to check out a new shopping center. As we walked past a small beauty store, I froze. The sign outside read Anna Grace. I pretended nothing was wrong and walked in with my friend. The store was elegant, softly lit, with gentle music playing. On the checkout counter, I saw a small plaque, founded by Anna Thompson, made possible by her mother's unwavering support. My heart skipped a beat. I walked over and casually asked a young staffer about a product. She cheerfully answered, then added, the store was originally opened under her mom's name. They're a very close family. I heard her mom even mortgaged their house to help in the beginning, then transferred it to Anna later. I smiled, nodded like any other customer. But inside I was filled with questions. I returned to the hotel, opened my laptop, and logged into the Texas State Business Registry. I typed in Anna Grace Cosmetics. First registered owner, Eleanor Thompson. Transfer of ownership, Anna Thompson. Date of transfer, 3 years ago. I sat in silence. 3 years ago was when I had to sell my only car to keep the clinic running during the pandemic. When I was eating toast every night just to save on office rent. When Mom said, the whole family's struggling, you'll have to figure things out yourself. But for Anna, Mom was willing to sign legal documents, take out a loan, and quietly hand over the business without a word. I wasn't jealous. Not really. I just felt like I had picked up a broken piece of memory. And it didn't make me cry. It made me quieter than ever. Because in that silence, I started stitching together the threads of a truth that had been buried for far too long. And I realized, maybe I hadn't disappeared the way they thought. I was just waiting for the right moment, to step forward without asking anyone's permission. The call came on a late fall afternoon, while I was sitting by the clinic window holding a warm cup of tea. The screen lit up with Anna's name. I almost let it ring until it stopped, but then I picked up. Her voice came through without even a hello. Mom had a mild stroke this morning. She's in the hospital now. The doctor said she'll need someone to care for her for a while. I tightened my grip on the cup, not sure if it was from surprise or something deeper. Have you contacted a care service? I asked. I've got a young kid, Kinsley. You know that. A nanny can't do everything. Besides, you're the one with more free time. More free time. I repeated, my tone calm. Anna clicked her tongue. I mean, you don't have a family of your own. Fewer obligations. Just a few weeks. Can you come take care of Mom? I didn't agree right away. I didn't say no either. I just stayed silent as usual. And then a day later I packed my bags. The car drove past barren ridges and curled around hills, dropping leaves like rust across the roadside. I hadn't been back to Vermont in nearly 8 years. Not since Grandma's funeral. Anna had laughed after the service, saying I should quit my sleepy therapy job and do something more impactful. The childhood house appeared around the bend. Same faded roof, backyard cluttered with rusted garden tools, second-story windows still marked where I'd taped a drawing in 3rd grade. I stopped in front of the porch. No one came out to greet me. The door was already open, not from hospitality but from indifference to anything involving me. Inside, the air was uncomfortably familiar. The same old scent, damp wood mixed with cleanser and faint peppermint from one of Anna's candles. Mom was in the living room, lying back in a recliner with a footrest. She looked smaller, her hair duller, eyes unfocused but not weak. Anna stood next to her, arms crossed, voice flat like she was reading the news. She's awake. But the doctor says she shouldn't walk on her own. Balance is off. I nodded, set down my bag and stepped forward. Mom glanced at me, her gaze just as cold as always. You finally made it, she said. I thought you were too busy saving the world. I didn't answer. Just pulled a chair closer, sat down beside her and gently asked, Have you eaten anything? She turned her face away, lips pressed tight. Anna spoke up. I left some soup in the fridge. Can you warm it up for her? I walked into the kitchen. Every step through that house echoed. This place had once been my whole world, even if no one ever said my name out loud, even if no one hung my drawings. But every corner, every stair still held memories. Dishes were piled in the sink. The fridge was covered with Anna's sticky notes, grocery lists, pickup times, instructions for reheating food. I found the container of soup, poured it into a pot and set it to simmer. I stood watching the soup bubble. The smell of carrots and celery brought me back to the days when Mom made me cook dinner for the whole family while Anna lay on the couch reading teen magazines. If I forgot the salt or cut the vegetables too big, Mom would say right in front of her, "No girl is clumsier than her." I brought the bowl back into the living room. Mom didn't say thank you. Didn't even look. I set it on the table and sat down again. Anna sighed like she'd just completed some noble task. I have to go back to Texas this weekend. My daughter's dance competition is coming up. Training's non-stop. I gave a small nod. Didn't ask questions. I've got the medications lined up, follow-up appointments, emergency contact numbers. Mom mostly just needs someone here. You can handle the rest, right? I've lived alone for years, I said, eyes still on Mom. It's nothing I can't handle. Anna looked at me for a second, then leaned down to give Mom a quick hug, like checking off a box. Before heading out the door, she turned back, her voice softer than usual. Thank you, Kinsley. I know, you're always there when it counts. That sentence, if it had come from anyone else, might have warmed my heart. But from Anna, it chilled me to the bone. Because it wasn't gratitude. It was a reminder that I was always the one they turned to when there was no one else. When the door shut, it was just me and my mother in that old room. She stayed silent, eyes fixed on the soundless TV screen. I quietly tidied up, then walked up to the old bedroom on the 2nd floor. I pushed the door open. The smell of old wood and yellowed paper hit me. Everything was just as I had left it. The single bed, the desk by the window, the unmarked bookshelf, and the faded lavender wallpaper. I sat at the edge of the bed. My fingers brushed against a tiny scratch on the bottom of the cabinet, the one where I carved the letter K with scissors when I was 13. I thought I had forgotten. But memory doesn't need a reminder. It only needs a place to return to. And now I was right there. In the very house that taught me how to endure, how to stay silent. and where I would finally begin to call things by their rightful name. I wasn't planning to dig anything up. It was just a rainy afternoon, the power had gone out, my mother was napping on the recliner under a blanket, and I didn't know what else to do but organize the old drawers in my father's former study. That room hadn't been used in years. Spiderwebs in the corners, the musty scent of paper and long sealed wood forming a thick air. I opened each drawer, dusted them out, folded a few old letters, some faded receipts. When I got to the third drawer, my hand touched a file folder bound with a brittle rubber band. On the front, written clearly in blue marker, was my name, Kinsley M. Thompson. I froze. My eyes scanned the handwriting. No doubt it was my grandfather's. Blue felt-tip pen, slanted strokes, gentle pressure, always signing his full name. I recognized it the way you recognize a voice you loved telling summer stories on quiet nights. I opened the folder. Inside was a photocopy of a property deed for a lakeside cabin on Cedar Lake, about a 20-minute drive from town. I'd only been there once as a child with Grandpa, vaguely remembering a backyard full of maple trees, a lake like glass, and frogs chirping behind the stone fence. The original heir was clearly listed, Kinsley M. Thompson, with birth year and ID number. But then, my eyes drifted to the bottom of the page. Under transfer of ownership was another name, Anna C. Thompson. And the signature next to consent to transfer was mine. Except it wasn't my handwriting. Not a single letter matched anything I had ever written. My heart slowed. I closed the folder carefully, like I was holding an open wound. That night, after my mother went to sleep, I quietly entered the study, opened my laptop, and searched the Windham County Land Records database. It took me over an hour to trace the exact parcel, the right lot number, the matching file. The property had been passed down by my grandfather when I turned 18, originally to me. But just a year later, ownership had been transferred to Anna, with a signed form bearing my name and my mother listed as the witness. I remembered that time clearly. I was a freshman in college. I had no idea this cabin even existed. I had never signed any papers related to an inheritance. I printed the entire file. The next morning, I brought it to the county office, requesting a verification of the deed transfer. The clerk was an older man named Hal. He studied the paper carefully, furrowed his brow, and asked, "You're sure this signature isn't yours?" I nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely sure." Hal paused, then gave a slow nod. "I can run it through the database and compare it with your official signature. But if you want to take this further, you'll need a forensic handwriting analyst." I thanked him and left, my mind spinning. The pieces were starting to fit. I remembered how my mother always avoided questions about Grandpa. I remembered the one time I mentioned his name after coming home from college and she brushed it off with a cold, "He always favored you. Don't expect anything." I returned to that house, stepping over the old wooden threshold like I was walking onto a stage where I'd been cast as the supporting role all my life. My mother sat at the kitchen table flipping through grocery ads. I laid the copy of the deed in front of her. She didn't look up right away. "Do you know anything about this?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. Her eyes flicked over the page just for a moment. Then she set it down, her tone flat. "Old news. I don't really remember." I sat across from her, eyes locked on hers. "I never signed any transfer papers." "So who did?" He shrugged. "Maybe Anna asked me to. You never cared about those things. You were off at school." "That property was a gift from Grandpa," I said, letting my voice dip low. "Did you know that?" She looked up. Her gray eyes showed fatigue but no remorse. "He was unfair. I just evened the scales. You didn't need that house. Anna did." I stood, took the file back to my room, and felt like someone had sliced off a thin layer of skin, just enough to hit the nerves. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about being stripped of the right to know you were ever given something, only to have it quietly stolen without a single apology, without a moment's hesitation. That night, I sat alone in my old room, the warm desk lamp lighting the printed documents. I wrote an email to a law firm I trusted, attaching every file. In the notes section, I typed only one line: "I need verification of the legality of these documents. And if necessary, I'm ready to file a claim. Not because of the lake cabin. Not because of the money. But because I couldn't let another piece of my life be buried under someone else's silence. I had stayed quiet for far too long. And silence, sometimes, is exactly what they used to take what was never theirs. After that cold exchange with my mother, I never brought up the lake cabin again. Every morning I still woke up early to cook porridge, prepare her medications, help her through physical therapy. At noon I took Ellie, Anna's daughter, to the nearby elementary school, picked her up in the afternoon and did homework with her. I went on living like nothing had changed, like I was still the obedient daughter they expected. But deep down a door had opened, and I walked through it without ever looking back. I began quietly collecting evidence. I photographed every document connected to my grandfather's estate. I noted down parcel numbers, case files, and compared every signature. I sent it all to a law firm in Portland, an old contact I still had in my phone from college, Evan Carter. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 15 years. Evan used to sit next to me in sociology. He was the one who quietly slipped a folded napkin into my hand after an award ceremony, when my mother showed up over an hour late, scrolling her phone while the principal read my name aloud to a packed auditorium. When it ended, she stood, didn't take a photo, didn't shake my hand. Just said, "Don't make such a big deal. Everyone gets awards," and walked away. I stood frozen, pretending not to hear the giggles from classmates nearby. And Evan, his shirt still ink-stained at the sleeve, had only handed me a napkin. It read, "Not everyone can stand alone that long. But you just did." I never forgot that note. After I sent the files, I didn't expect much. But the very next day my phone rang. His voice on the line was warm, steady, low. "This is Evan Carter. I just received an email from Kinsley Thompson. Are you the one from Lincoln High?" I paused for a second. "Yes. That's me." "Well then, I owe you a hello after nearly 2 decades. I'll take this case if you'll trust me." I didn't answer right away. But I smiled. We started with emails, then gradually longer, more careful calls. I mailed the original documents to his office in Portland. Evan arranged for an independent handwriting analyst, who confirmed that the signature Kinsley M. Thompson on the property transfer didn't match the official samples filed with the bank and university. While waiting for the court's decision, I continued playing my familiar role at home. I carefully wrapped my mother's medication chart, made the vegetable soup she still liked. I helped Ellie write a short poem about autumn for her class. I didn't skip a single caretaking task because I understood something clearly. People like my mother, like Anna, only let their guard down when they believe you've grown used to staying small. One afternoon, while I was clearing out a pile of old newspapers in the living room, my mother suddenly spoke up. "Anna says you've been smiling to yourself lately. Strange." I looked up, folded a paper, and replied gently, "Maybe I just feel more at ease knowing you're getting better." She stared at me for a moment. Her eyes, as always, never softened. "Be careful. Don't start dreaming about that house again. It's not meant for someone like you." I set the last newspaper down on the table and wiped my hands with a worn cloth. "I'm not dreaming, Mom. I'm just preparing." She didn't ask what I was preparing for. That evening, Evan sent a message. "The signature has been confirmed as forged. The evidence is strong enough to file with the local court. I'll draft the asset fraud claim by next week." I read that line over and over. Not because I doubted it, but because part of me still couldn't believe it was really happening. Me, the daughter once called useless, dressed in hand-me-downs, erased from her own inheritance, was now taking steps to reclaim what should have been hers all along. The next morning, while driving Ellie to school, she turned to me, her eyes uncertain. "Miss Kinsley," my mom said, "that house has always been hers. Did you know that?" My hands tightened on the wheel. I looked at her small face, waiting for an answer. I leaned down to retie her shoelace and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, I knew. But you know something? Just saying something belongs to you doesn't make it yours forever. And if something's taken the wrong way, sometimes it finds its way back home." Ellie nodded like she understood, even if maybe she didn't fully yet. But I understood. I was counting down the days. And when the time came, I wouldn't need anyone to say sorry. I just needed the truth to be put back where it belonged. In the light. Not buried. Untouchable. That evening, the rain had been falling since late afternoon. Wind slipped through the old window, making the white curtain knock softly against the wall. My mother sat at the head of the table, leaning against a pillow behind her chair, hands folded in her lap, her eyes fogged over like she didn't want to be present for what was coming. Anna had flown in from Texas earlier that morning. Her suitcase still had the airport tag on it, and now sat at the table in rain-soaked heels. I brought out 3 plates of butternut squash soup, placed them down like I always did. But I didn't sit right away. I returned to the living room and took a folder from the wooden cabinet drawer. Everything already clipped and ready. The original ownership certificate my grandfather had left me, the fraudulent transfer document, and the forensic report confirming the signature didn't match. I placed the whole folder on the table quietly without a sound. Anna's eyes went wide. My mother didn't look at the papers, she looked at me like I was something unfamiliar. I stood still for a moment, then calmly said, "These are all the documents related to the lake house at Cedar, including the forged signature and the court-certified handwriting analysis." The kitchen air suddenly thickened like all the oxygen had been pulled out. Anna shot up, her voice sharp. "What are you doing, Kinsley? Turning dinner into a courtroom?" I remained where I was, my voice steadier than I expected. "I didn't turn it into anything. Everyone's silence brought us here." My mother reached forward and shoved the folder aside, her face darkening. "You're ungrateful. This family gave you everything." I looked her straight in the eyes. "What exactly did this family give me, Mom? A place in the background? A gold star for being the polite one? Or a house Grandpa left to me that I never even knew I had rights to?" Anna slammed her hand on the table, her spoon clattering. "You're destroying everything. Do you even know how hard Mom worked to keep us together?" I pulled out a chair and sat down across from them. My voice wasn't loud, but every word rang clear. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm rebuilding justice from the rubble you left behind." Anna's face drained of color. My mother bit her lower lip, her eyes trembling, but still no admission. I opened the folder and gently slid it toward them. "I've submitted the case to court. The documents are valid. The signature was forged. The property transfer happened without informing the rightful heir. This is no longer a family matter." My mother exhaled slowly, her voice like a blade between her teeth. "You think you're smarter than everyone at this table? You think a few papers can erase everything we've built?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down at the bowl of soup in front of me, then back up, my eyes soft but unshaken. "I'm not trying to erase anyone. I'm just finally standing up. Not as the helper. Not as the one in the background. Not as the shadow." Ellie had been standing at the doorway for who knows how long, hugging her teddy bear, eyes wide with confusion. I softened my voice. "Sweetheart, go play in your room, okay? I'll come read you a story in a bit." She nodded and quietly slipped away like a breeze leaving a storm-heavy room. When the door clicked shut, Anna suddenly lowered her voice, softer now. "Don't you care about Ellie? She needs a home. That house suits her. What are you going to do with it? Turn it into some revenge trophy?" I looked at her. She didn't look like someone who always won. She was pleading, but not for me. She was afraid of losing something she thought she'd always have. I answered quietly, "I'm not taking the house to punish anyone. I'm reclaiming the truth. I'm done living in gratitude for things I was never actually given." My mother braced herself to stand, needing a moment to steady. Her voice, though weak, cut like glass. "You really are a traitor to your blood. Born just to break this family apart." I didn't rise. I just met her gaze and for once didn't look away. If being family means staying silent through injustice, then I'd rather be a stranger. No one said another word. The rain kept tapping the window like the steady drumbeat of a verdict about to be read. I gathered the folder, didn't offer an apology. And I walked away from that dinner table without feeling guilty. I didn't need forgiveness. I didn't need permission. The hearing was held on a crisp October morning, with dew still clinging to the dark red maple branches outside the courthouse porch. I arrived early, wearing the stone gray coat Grandpa gave me when I graduated high school. I sat quietly in the front row outside the courtroom. Evan was already there, briefcase set neatly beside him. His glance told me everything. We were ready. Now it was time for the truth to speak for itself. My mother entered first, escorted by a medical staffer. Her cold stare hadn't faded. Anna followed, hair pinned up, designer coat draped over her shoulders, but her face gave away her tension. She tried to appear composed, but her hands clutched the purse strap too tightly to be casual. I didn't look at them for long. I had to keep my mind focused on the only thing that mattered: the truth. The judge was a man in his 60s, white hair, calm voice, every word deliberate. He called Evan to open. Evan stood, holding our file, and began in a firm, measured tone. Your Honor, today we present evidence that the property on Cedar Lake, a wooden house left by Mr. Robert D. Harris, was unlawfully transferred away from his legal heir, his granddaughter Kinsley Thompson. The transfer was made using a forged signature, without clear consent from the plaintiff. The judge nodded and asked for the documents to be submitted. Evan handed over the file containing handwriting verification, bank statements, and the original inheritance documentation. I listened to the sound of the pages turning, my heart tightening, years of being forgotten now taking shape through written words. Then it was my turn to speak. I stepped up to the stand. My hands were steady, though my voice was a bit hoarse. I pulled out an old letter from my coat pocket, the paper a soft yellow, edges slightly frayed, the handwriting slanted like my grandfather's whisper through each word. The letter was clearly dated, 1 week before he passed. I lifted my head and looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to read a personal letter, serving as indirect evidence of the intent of the deceased. The judge nodded. I opened the letter and read slowly, each word clear. My sweet Kinsley, by the time you read this I may no longer be around. But I want you to know something. The house by the lake isn't just property. It's where I found peace in my final years. And I want you, the only one who always listened, who sat with me without asking for anything, to be the one who takes care of that place. You don't have to be like anyone else. Just hold on to your gentleness. That part of you is what makes you worthy. And one day if someone tries to deny that, open this letter. Don't be afraid to speak the truth. Don't be afraid to stand alone. I've seen you do it since you were a child. And now I place this home in your hands, not because I loved you more than the others, but because you never asked for anything. Yet you were always the most deserving. Signed, Robert D. Harris. The room went still. Not a sound. Only the soft fold of the letter in my hands, so quiet it was almost inaudible. I handed it to the judge. Evan immediately added, Your Honor, this letter is a notarized copy certified by local attorney Harold Klein, a close friend of Mr. Robert Harris. The original was destroyed by a family member, but Mr. Klein retained the copy per Mr. Harris's instructions. My mother jerked slightly. She turned to Anna and hissed, He sent it to Klein? I thought it was. I heard enough to understand what she meant. And I knew then she had burned the original. Every line of that letter was proof of what she had tried to erase. Anna's face turned pale, her expression frozen. Her eyes seemed to crack open, slowly but unmistakably. The judge flipped through the letter, then spoke slowly. We find that the evidence submitted is sufficient to clearly reflect the intentions of the deceased. In addition to the verified handwriting analysis and financial records showing no legal transaction or agreement of inheritance relinquishment, this court rules that the house by Cedar Lake belongs to Ms. Kinsley Thompson in accordance with the original inheritance. Any transactions dated after March 12, 20XX are hereby voided. I stood there quietly for a long time. Not because I had won, but because I felt seen, not out of pity, not because I kept silent, but because the truth had finally spoken. And no one could smother it. Not with authority, not with rank, and certainly not by pretending to forget. A week after the hearing, I received 2 letters on the same day. One came from Evan's law office, plain white envelope, neatly printed, confirming I had been reinstated as the legal owner of the lake house at Cedar. The second had no return address. The envelope was old-fashioned, the handwriting slightly uneven. I recognized it immediately, it was my mother's. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there on the wooden table in the reading room, beside the lamp and the little cactus Ellie had given me. I brewed myself a cup of tea and drank it slowly, letting my heart settle like the surface of the lake after the wind had passed. That afternoon Anna showed up at my door unannounced. She stood quietly on the steps, wind blowing a few strands of hair across her thinner face. No sparkly earrings, no elaborate clothes. Just an old sweater, flat shoes, and eyes no longer guarded. I opened the door. Said nothing. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in and leaned against the upholstered chair by the fireplace, hands clasped tightly. I'm bankrupt. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I stood by the doorway silent. Mom used my name to take out several loans. Years ago. I thought she'd been paying them off. She looked up at me, eyes brimming. Now the bank is forcing me to repay everything. The house is gone. The car's been pawned. I have nothing left. I poured more tea, set the cup on the table, and simply said, I don't know whose name she used, but I'm certain she never asked anyone's permission but her own. Anna froze. Then bowed her head before suddenly lifting it again, her eyes red and wet. You said you forgave her. You even said you didn't hold grudges. So, can you help me? I sat down across from her, looked her in the eye. Forgiveness doesn't mean I continue letting others lean on me without taking responsibility for what they've done. Anna stayed quiet. After a while, she pulled a wrinkled stack of papers from her bag. Loan confirmations, debt summaries, and a handwritten letter from my mother to the bank, stating she had used her daughter's name to keep the property in the family. I read each page, every number. Nothing I hadn't already suspected. But seeing it spelled out in my mother's handwriting still made my chest tighten. Not from sorrow, but from the reminder that once again she had gambled everything to maintain a fragile grip on family power, and was willing to betray anyone to protect it. What about Mom? I asked. Anna replied, lips pressed. She's being investigated for unreported income. They say they've been tracking it for years. Now, there's no way out. She's staying at Aunt Martha's. Not saying much. But she wants you to come. I went quiet for a moment. Then said, I'm not going there to comfort anyone. And I'm certainly not stepping back into the role of the good daughter. Anna leaned forward, her voice breaking. Then what do you want? I looked her straight in the eyes. I want you both to understand that I've existed all these years not to compensate, not to catch the fallout from everyone else's bad decisions. I'm not a life raft. I'm not a doormat. I'm a person. And from now on, I live for myself. Anna didn't say another word. She lowered her head, shoulders trembling slightly. I hadn't come to make her feel worse. But some truths, if left unspoken, will continue to be used as tools for deception. That evening, when everything had quieted down, I finally opened my mother's letter. Inside were only a few lines, yet each word felt like it scraped across old scars that had never truly healed. Kinsley, you've won. And I know I no longer have the right to speak. But if there's still anything in you that feels like family, don't let me and Anna sink too far. We were wrong, I know. But is this really how you want everything to end? I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't hate my mother. But I couldn't go back to being the one they leaned on only when everything else had fallen apart. I stood by the glass door looking out over the lake. The seasonal winds had begun to shift. The water was still as glass. Everyone must learn to face the consequences of their own choices. I was no longer the place they could return to just to escape. That summer, I moved permanently into the lake house by Cedar Lake. A small home, painted a faded blue, nestled quietly among tall red maple trees, as if sheltering a piece of forgotten childhood. I cleaned out every corner, took down the old curtains, flung open the windows, and let the light flood into spaces that had long been cloaked in shadow. Each morning, I'd brew myself a cup of coffee, carry it out to the wooden bench on the porch, and sit, listening to the birds chirping and the gentle waves tapping against the stone shore. No more accusations, no more words light as air but sharp enough to cut. Just me with myself. I spent a large part of the remaining settlement funds renovating the back rooms of the house, which had once been a storage area for wood and garden tools. After several months of working with community architects and some old friends in the field, I opened a small center, a completely free mental health space for children and women who had endured emotional abuse or abandonment by those closest to them. I didn't want to stop at healing myself. I wanted those who had felt like I once did, silenced, turned into shadows in their own homes, to have a place to breathe, to cry, to speak without fear of judgment. We held group talks every Wednesday where children who had been hurt learned to draw with colored pencils, and single mothers gathered together, warm ginger tea in hand, eyes meeting in quiet understanding with no need for many words. One autumn afternoon, as leaves began falling softly onto the tiled roof, I was sorting through files at the center when a familiar postal truck stopped at the gate. The mailman handed me a small cream-colored envelope, the handwriting slanted in blue ink, recognizable at a glance. I opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn card on pale-colored paper, decorated with tiny pressed leaves. The message inside made my chest tighten. Dear Miss Kinsley, my name is Ellie. I know I'm Anna's daughter and I don't really understand what happened between you and my mom, but I just wanted to say this. You were the first person who made me feel loved without needing to be perfect. When you held my hand that first day at the center, I felt my heart get lighter. Thank you for being here. Love, Ellie. I froze. The letter trembled in my hands as if carrying the warmth of that child herself. I got up and walked into the living room where an old photograph of my grandfather still hung. Him in his rocking chair, thick book in hand, his kind eyes looking down at me as a child, asleep at his feet. I placed Ellie's letter beside the frame, right along the wooden edge. Softly, like a promise to the past and a marker of the present. I bowed my head and whispered, my voice as gentle as wind skimming across the lake. I no longer live in silence, Grandpa. I live with my own voice now. And maybe with this voice, I'll help other children grow up without the silence I once carried. In the distance, a flock of ducks cut across the water, wings leaving a trail on the soft orange sky. I stepped out onto the porch and opened the door wide. The clean air swept in, carrying the scent of maple leaves and something deeper, like a wound that had finally begun to heal. That night, I wrote Ellie's name into the list of long-term care participants. Not as my niece, but as a soul in need of true care. I also added a small cabinet in the center, called the corner for things never said. Inside, I placed blank journals, a few pencils, and a handwritten sign. Write down the things you never dared to say. This place doesn't judge you. I don't know how far this path will take me. But I know one thing. I am no longer the child who had to brace herself to be seen. I am no longer the person shoved aside at the dinner table because your sister needs it more. I am myself. And every step I take through this lakeside house, every laugh from the children echoing past the glass windows, is a piece of my rebirth, bit by bit, day by day, without needing anyone's permission just to exist. My story may be nearing its end, but I know everyone who's listened carries something unique in their heart. Maybe you were the child forgotten in your own home. Maybe you forgave, only to be hurt again, then stood back up on your own like I did. So how about you? If one day you found out the person you loved most had used your trust, would you stay silent? Or speak up and reclaim what was yours? Would you choose to forgive, but not forget, like I did, or walk away for good? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to know what you saw in this story. Was it pain, betrayal, or hope? Because sometimes just one honest story can make someone feel like they're not so alone in the journey to reclaim their worth. If this story stirred something in your heart, don't forget to follow the channel so we can walk together through more stories of family, love, struggle, and healing. Every story is a slice of life, and who knows, maybe one day you'll see yourself reflected in one of them.